Mm-mm. Kirk Kennedy, Strizzy. It's a little thinking out loud and and uh and potential motion sickness as Strat keeps moving his camera. So if you got some motion sickness, we apologize because Strat keeps moving his camera around. But thinking out loud, was a cross-examine short. Just wanted to distract. We're just having a conversation, and just thought it'd be interesting to go live on this. So this is a short. This is not a cross-examine episode. We'll see y'all Thursday night for that. What up, though?
What
But we
up,
just
dude?
going to just in having a conversation. So recently, as many of you probably know, an article by Julie Roys was released that detailed a very serious situation that has to do with physical, verbal, sexual abuse of children between a lady named Eileen Gray and her husband, David Gray. And the article is targeted at John MacArthur because it's happened at Grace Community Church. And it's about 20 something years ago. A lot of people have been talking about this. So Strack and I were just having a conversation, thinking out loud, and thought I wanted to just share some thoughts. Y'all know how these go. So I want to say, I'm just going to start by saying this. I got sent a link of a video. It's actually a really helpful video by a guy who calls himself Honest Youth Pastor on YouTube. And in the video, what he did was he created a timeline of all the events based on all the documents that he read. And I think he tried to really, I mean, he was very humble with it. He wasn't arrogant. He wasn't judging anyone. I think he tried to humbly kind of fill in. So, okay, here's the timeline of what happened and what does this mean? And questions that came from the timeline. Now, I've watched since this came out like last week, I've watched the different back and forth. I've watched many people take up John MacArthur's defense, many people take up an offense towards him, and all of this stuff. And I was thinking this morning, wow, this is really interesting. When you look at what's happening with stuff like the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill podcast, right? Last summer, they really detailed a lot of what Mark Driscoll did and sort of how he led and that led to the falling of his church out in
Did you
Seattle.
listen? Did you listen to the whole joint?
I didn't listen to. I think I missed. I think there are two episodes I didn't get to, so I missed the last two because I
Okay.
was told that Josh Harris was on one of them, and I didn't hear that. But I listened to most of it, and I just remember thinking, I'm in Acts 29, so I had leadership training for something within Acts 29, and so I was with Brian Howard and Doug Logan, and they gave us a whole nother narrative of that.
Okay.
Um, so somebody wrote this. Julie Roys is determined to take down John MacArthur. Any hint of wrongdoing really perceived, she's going to jump on it. That's interesting. That's an interesting comment, and I think we'll get to why I'm saying that's interesting in a minute. What I would say, though, here's what I would say, and we only, for us it says Facebook user. Here's what I would say to the person who put this. I don't know who you are, friend or foe. Is how would you not be doing the same thing that she's doing by judging her motive? Like you haven't talked to Julie Roy. So saying she's going to jump on it, I hope you realize that's a motive issue. Like you're talking about someone's motive, their heart. So I don't know how you would say that any hint of wrongdoing really perceived she's going to jump on it. To me, that's doing the same thing you're accusing her of doing. You're jumping on her saying that she's doing this. So like, what is that? I don't know. I don't know what that means, but this gets to sort of what we've talked about and what we've thought about, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not I don't know Julie Royce, so I'm not defending Julie Royce, and I don't know who the person was that made that comment, either friend or foe. But the thing that I realized when I thought about like John MacArthur, this story, I thought about Ravi Zacharias, right? His story coming out, and then Mark Driscoll, and then then other narratives. I was like, man, what's happening right now? What is the Lord doing? And there were a couple things that have stood out to me as I've thought this. So I'm just going to say one of these, and then we'll just briefly talk through them. But since this comment came in, I want to start with this one because this comment came in. I don't know Julie Roys at all. I don't know her. I'm not going to defend her or nothing. But I also don't know John MacArthur. I
Right.
don't know John MacArthur at all. I know who he is. I've been at times influenced and liked and disliked things that he said. And okay, appreciate that. Appreciate that, brother. Appreciate that, Mike. Appreciate that. This is I shouldn't have made such a strong assumption. Just looking at her recent hit pieces on MacArthur. I'm not sure. Like I don't know. I don't look at her stuff and call it. I can't say it's a hit piece or not, because even that again is a motive, right? Is a motive of it's a statement about her motive for why she writes what she writes.
I mean, it's being called a hit piece by people, and maybe that's why he's using the terminology. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Maybe
it could be that. Could be that.
That's probably how he's seeing it referred to constantly.
Yeah. I just think when I hear hit piece, I think it's a targeted. I think it's a misleading targeted thing, and I don't know if that's what she's doing.
That's appealing to motive again. Hit piece.
Yeah, it's another motive statement. But again, this is what I think the Lord is really dealing with. We're so used to talking like that we don't even realize what we're doing. So I appreciate Mike just saying I shouldn't have made such a strong assumption. Right. But the point that I was thinking about is like, listen, I don't know John MacArthur, right? I know who he is. I've been impacted by him. I don't know him. And so I'm not going to defend a person that I don't know. Yeah. I'm not going to take up a defense for him unless I know him specifically. Let me give you a real life example of what I mean. Some years ago, my church was a part of a family of churches called Sovereign Grace Ministries. And Sovereign Grace Ministries was getting hit with a bunch of stuff, like sexual abuse, all this type of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Now, the guy that I was pastoring with was on staff through a lot of that. But I knew him personally. We were at the church I'm currently at right now together. And I remember telling him, look, bro, I know you. So I'm going down with the ship with you, but I'm not going down with the ship of Sovereign Grace, because I don't know all of them people and know what's what. Right. I don't know them.
Yeah, now that was it was a huge movement and a huge church.
Huge movement.
It was huge.
Sovereign Grace was a big deal for up until 2013, 2014. We left Sovereign Grace in 2015. My church. But I'm not going to defend a dude that I don't know. And what I'm seeing is a lot of people taking up a defense for John MacArthur or an offense. And let me tell you why you shouldn't do that. Matthew 23, this is what Matthew 23 said. This is what Jesus said about the Pharisees. This is I still am blown away to this day. When you think about all the interaction Jesus had with the Pharisees, right? All of the ways he challenged them and exposed them. Here's what Jesus says right before he dies to the broader Jewish audience. Here's what he says. He says this is Matthew 23, beginning in verse 2. Here's what Jesus says. The scribes and the Pharisees are seated in the chair of Moses, right? Therefore, do whatever they tell you and observe it. But don't do what they do, because they don't practice what they teach. Right? He gives us this thing. So think about this for a minute. I'm not saying this about John MacArthur or anyone. I'm just taking what Jesus said and thinking about it principally. And then, Strack, I want to see what you think. Think about what Jesus is saying. The Pharisees are the people that he has been going back and forth with and exposing for his whole earthly ministry, right? For 3 years, but even beyond that, we saw Jesus in Luke 3 at 12 years old busting their heads, right? For Jesus to say to the people, these men still have the responsibility to teach you. They sit on the chair of Moses, which means they are functioning as the people that God is allowing to still teach you the law of Moses. So listen to what they say. Mind you, Jesus has exposed them as hypocrites, but he says, I'm still allowing them to teach you because I've given them the wisdom and the gifting to explain to you the law of Moses. But then he says, but don't imitate their lifestyle because they're hypocrites. Okay? So let me just say this principally and then Strack, you weigh in. principally, God will allow people to have the gift to teach his word, even if they are disqualified eternally from doing it. So when they stand before God, they may not make it to heaven. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 9, I beat my body and make it my slave, lest after teaching to others, I disqualify myself. All right. The reason why I'm looking at this like, I'm not defending John MacArthur just because he wrote books or taught sermons or things that I agree with. I don't know him. He could be a Pharisee or a scribe that God is allowing to teach but doesn't have the example. This is a category of people that God is. So I'm not going to take up a defense or an offense for anyone in this situation because I don't know them. Jesus's words here, they blow me away and they frighten me as a pastor because God is saying, I'll allow people to still teach even if they don't have the character. So I'm not going to defend, and I don't think you should. Many of you do not know John MacArthur. You do not know Julie Roys. You do not know Eric Mason. You do not know Thabiti Anyabwile. You don't know these people. You don't know us. You only know what we give you. You don't know my wife, my children. You don't know the state of my marriage. You don't know anything about me but my music, my personality, cross-examine. Be careful, church, in taking up a defense or an offense for people that you don't know. I'm talking about that you don't know. Now, if you go to the church, Strack knows me. There's a lot. So if somebody says something about me, I would expect for Strack to be like, nah, I don't believe that. I know Kurt enough. I don't believe it until it becomes true. If it becomes true, then okay, I was wrong. I don't believe that. We have to be careful. I think God is exposing something deeper than just what did John MacArthur do? We have to be careful to not take up defenses and offenses because God has allowed people to sit in the chair of Moses, even though he's telling you don't imitate what they do. Strack, I want your thoughts.
What's the passage where Paul tells them like, yo, let them go. If they proclaim in the name of Christ, cool. Let it be proclaimed. You know what I'm saying? They may not be with us, but they ain't necessarily against us.
Yeah, you talking about when Paul says that?
Yeah, Paul says it, but Christ says it as well.
Yeah, Jesus said it. Paul kind of said it in Philippians 1. They preached Christ out of envy and whatever. He was like, I'm good as long as Christ's name is proclaimed.
Right.
That's Philippians 1.
Right. So he took
like, I don't care if they preach out of
envy. He took no offense.
Nope.
You know what I'm saying? Like he was like, yo, hold up. The name of Christ is being proclaimed.
That's what I care about.
Then I'm cool with that. I think a lot more of us need to take that posture, for sure. But I also believe, like when you were saying about how even Paul says, let me keep pushing and beating my body lest I be disqualified.
Yes, 1 Corinthians 9.
Right. I believe the tension is there for someone who is a Christian because the weight of performance still resides, even though we long for the righteousness of Christ and not our own. You know what I'm saying? That there's still that pressure for works. Like, let me show you my faith by my works.
Right.
You know, there's still that pressure, that mentality that we desire to do what Christ says to do because we love him. Right? He says, those who love me do my commandments. I don't believe, though, that someone can believe that they're trusting in Christ and his righteousness alone their entire lives, not banking on their own works, and then not be with Christ in eternity. You know what I'm saying? So what you were saying was someone could be being used by the Lord to proclaim his name, and just like the Pharisees were, but I don't think that the Pharisees were trusting in Christ for salvation. You know what I'm saying? So that distinction needs to be made because that would conjure up a fear for some people. You know what I'm saying? And I think a fear that would be unbiblical, you know, because we would be fearing the Lord again from a works-based stance. And we should not do that, obviously. But it doesn't take away from your point, though, because somebody could have 50 years in ministry, and if you don't know them, they could be living contrary to what they've said and proclaimed from the pulpit for 50 years. There are people who know them that would may stand and defend them and say the opposite, like you said. You would stand with your brother who was pastoring with you because you knew him. But for people who don't know them, don't know their personal lives, don't know their character on a one-on-one basis to stand and defend, what are you really defending then? Are you defending the golden calf? I mean, are you because if you're not, that'd be like me. You know what? It doesn't even need an analogy because I think it explains itself. I mean, you don't know the person. How can you defend them? You know, you can especially defend them to the point of offending a brother or sister in Christ.
Well, that's what it becomes, though, right? So
Yeah.
that's the concern, though. It's not just I'm taking up a defense or an offense against him. It's I'm taking up a defense for him against other believers.
Right.
And
Against
taking
you,
up
who
an
I might
offense
know.
against him for other believers, right?
Right.
So it's already causing division in the body, right? As if we need, and that's my point is I don't know, like your point is good as a theological treatise, but that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm not just, look, the only the Lord knows who really belongs to him, right? Only the Lord knows who the elect really are, right? We know based on our, I'm talking about, I don't know you, so I can't vouch for you. And just because I've liked your books or your music or whatever, if there's some scandal that comes out, I might be like, man, I mean, I've been affected by the dude, but that's different than I'm going to slander other people, judge their motives, you know, not to throw Mike under the bus, but I'm going to say things that question the motives of people who have a different opinion than me, but you don't have any more knowledge than they do, though.
Right.
You don't know this dude. Like, I don't know John MacArthur. There are things I could say that I'm not going to say from people who do have worked closely with him, and grace to you, staff. I'm not going to say that because that's not what we do. We don't do hit pieces. You know what I'm saying? We speak to the shoes, and if they fit, wear them. If they don't, then be barefooted for the glory of God, right? We don't be calling people's names out, and I don't do that because that's just I think that's just divisive. But I'm gonna speak to a situation, and if you're a part of that, may it convict you. If it doesn't, cool. But I think the division that it's causing, even among believers, it's like, why are you defending? Like, it's the same thing. Like, why are you defending Jonathan Edwards for not owning slaves? Like, you don't know if he made it to heaven or not. Why? Because you like his theology. So that all of a sudden, no, Jesus said the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat, right? It's possible for people to have the ability to teach truth, but they deny it by their own lifestyle. That's why Paul said that. Look, I beat my body and make it my slave. So I just think we got to be careful when we're taking up a defense or an offense of people that we don't know. If you're a member of his church and you feel like that's not true of him, cool. I think you should defend your leaders if you know I don't think that's true.
Right.
I'm not. And then if you're proven wrong, you're proven wrong.
As Christians, we know that's true, that we wrestle with that every day. Like, am I living up to what I proclaim?
Right.
You know, am I living according to the calling? You know what I'm saying? Like, am I living according to what you've called me to do, Lord? Because I proclaim it, so I should be living it. You know what I mean? So obviously it would be true that the opposite would exist. I mean, not it's just real. Like, we have the tension. We wrestle with that on a daily basis. So we know the reality of living in such a way that you would proclaim one thing and live another is real.
Right.
So we know people live that way. So
we do know that. And I'm not saying John MacArthur does do that. I'm just saying I'm not going to the mattresses for him.
Right.
When I don't know if he does that or not. I don't know that.
And there's no legitimate good old boys club because ain't nobody really good. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's
100.
just, it don't exist.
Right. So the next thing that I felt like as I was thinking about that I had an issue with, it kind of connects to what we just said. You know, we talk a lot about celebrity pastors, right? But what I think the Lord is exposing is more the celebrity culture, right? Like, we are, like, so in Jesus's day, right? Remember when Peter said, when the rich young ruler, right? It said that Jesus said, look, it is not a camel. It's easier for a camel to walk through the eye of a needle than the rich to be saved, right? And then Peter and them were like, well, who then can be saved, right? They asked that question because in their day and age, if you were rich, they saw it as a blessing from God. Like, you were definitely favored. What do we call it? Blessed and
So
highly
do we.
favored. Right?
Yeah, so do we.
Yeah, right. And we still do, but we don't just do it for people that are rich. We do it for people that have platforms that we respect. So the
Exactly.
larger the platform,
Yeah.
we assume the wisdom from God that they have. And
Yeah.
if you, that's how we think. But what's interesting is you'll look at someone like a Joel Osteen who has a bigger platform than all the people that we respect, and we wouldn't say that, oh, the Lord's really gifted him, and we wouldn't think that way, right? There's people with these huge platforms that we wouldn't give that to, but for some reason,
Well,
if
it
we,
depends on who you talk to, though, because when you talk about the charismatic world, they do give that.
well, I'm talking about our world, bro. I'm not
Right,
talking about
right.
everybody. I'm just talking
But
about the world that we're in.
but our world consists of both of that, though.
Right,
And
right.
God does. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
But if we nuance every statement, we can't make a point, right? I'm just making a point that the people that we would know that we would most associate with wouldn't be like, oh, this dude is that dude, right? We wouldn't say the platform for him, but we will say, oh, because I respect this guy and he has this many followers in his church, or he's written this many books, or he has this many YouTube subscribe, all that. Like we are like the Peter and them thinking that when you have a big platform, that means that the Lord has blessed you, right? You are one of the people that God is. And I think the Lord is exposing our view of he's exposing a celebrity culture, because you have that, but then you have the rise of like discernment blogs and YouTube videos, and everyone's trying to make a platform off of this, right? Like to me, so you see this other thing too, right? You see this where the, First Corinthians 13, love doesn't rejoice at wrongdoing. Now I'm not seeing people like celebrating, but I think they're so quick to promote it, draw attention to it. Let's talk about it. You made this point a couple weeks ago about us. You said, look, I'm trying to make sure we're not the Christian TMZ, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you're right. A lot of what we look to is like Christian TMZ, like where's the drama? Let's hear his take on it. And it's like that dude is from a distance. And I got friends who do this. So I'm just, it's like, look, we throw everybody under the bus, right? But like it's a sense of, I think God is exposing the celebrity culture. It's not just the pastors, it's our view of them and our desire to be like them. Like the celebrity pastors there's a celebrity culture where we're all trying to get popularity, notoriety for our perspective. And it's like, fam, you don't know any more than these people do, except maybe did a little bit of research. I think the Lord is really saying, look at how you guys are.
Yeah.
Look at the culture of the church and how much of it is so drawn to not just the pastors, but everybody wants to be sort of seen and heard. And when I say everyone, I don't mean every person. I'm speaking hyperbole. I'm not going to qualify every statement. I'm making a point to make a point. That people are just drawn to like YouTube videos. I'm watching people arguing back and forth. You watch my YouTube videos. I explain this. And it's like, I mean, we do the same thing, but we're not doing it to like target, to like, we do 360 news, but we're not really weighing in like a whole episode geared at this, because we're not trying to be Christian TMZ, because the celebrity pastors is one thing, but we're the problem. We make these people celebrities, right? We're the ones that give people the platform. Like platforms, you can buy a platform, but most people, they're giving them, right? You mentioned golden calves. Like there's these platforms that people want, and then platforms that people have. And the bigger the platform, the more wisdom it is. And it's like, nah, fam, it doesn't work that way. Everyone that's rich wasn't blessed by God. And everyone that has 40,000 Twitter followers and has written many books and all of it doesn't mean that the Lord is riding with everything they do, or they're never wrong in their perspective. I think the Lord is really exposing how much we look to everybody else instead of the word and instead of our own local pastors, right? Like to me, when I see all this stuff, I think this should make everyone grateful for their local pastor. The one who's not in scandal, the one who's not going to, who's going to pray for you, who's going to meet with you. None of these men, some of these guys, I've been at conferences with them, there's security around them. You can't even really get to them. If they're walking in the hallway of a conference, you can't even touch them. And yet these are the people that we look to, and then we're becoming like this. It's incredible to me.
Yeah, I mean, quantity does not qualify quality.
Nah, it doesn't.
And that's That's what has been pushed with the celebrity mindset, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, there was one other thing you said. I don't know if you remember it. Because we were talking about this a lot, and it's another angle that we both talked about this. The other thing that I feel like really stands out to me about this John MacArthur situation and all the hubbub around it. And this is a question, and I think it's a statement, but I'm going to put it in the form of a question because I'm not the Lord and I don't know the answer to this. But I'd be curious if the people who are as outraged at John MacArthur or whoever, or if you're outraged at John MacArthur's apparent alleged sin in this, or if you're outraged at people who defend him or people who are against them, I'm just curious, like, are you as outraged at your own sin as you are John MacArthur's? Or the husband, David Gray? Or are you as outraged at your own sin as you are of like Julie Roy's? Like that's the thing that boggles my mind. Like there's so much outrage over sin that's not mine.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, are you as offended when you sin against God as you are when you think they sin against God? See, I think this is what the Lord's really exposing. I think we think it's about, oh, look at what they did. He shouldn't be in ministry, or oh, it's a hit piece. She's doing this and she's saying this and doing that. Man, I rarely, and I wonder, do these people, are they outraged over their own sin? Are they broken at their own sinfulness towards the Lord?
Oh.
Are you exposing yourself publicly? I haven't seen YouTube videos by people exposing their own weaknesses. Like do a hit piece on you. Do your own hit piece. You see what I'm saying? Like that's what I feel like is missing. Like God doesn't care about your outrage towards someone else's sin. He wants you to care about if everyone was as outraged at their own sin as they were at all these stories, we would be a totally different entity in the world. Listen, when God said be the salt of the earth, he didn't mean Lot's wife. We looking back at everybody else, right? But I don't see no hit pieces on your own self. It's like, it's all of this. And I feel like, man, where's the sense of, you know what? There go I, but for the grace of God. Remember that phrase that we used to say? There go I, but for the grace of God.
For sure.
So Kobe just said, look, I've noticed one thing I've noticed on this. If someone defends MacArthur, it's an idol. But yet these same folks going hard against him are also treating him as an idol. They just don't see it. I agree with that.
Yep.
I think that's a stay balanced perspective. I think it is. But I don't even think, to be honest, someone else, Femme Great, I think, to be honest, I feel like it's like not, to feel like it's non-believers that have the most outrage towards the sin of believers. I don't know. I don't know that. I think that can happen. I think that does happen. But I think a lot of believers, we self-righteously are outraged at stories like this and other people. So like to go with Kobe said, oh, it's an idol, you're defending him. I don't even think it's an idol. I think people just I think we're all more confident of our assessment than we should be.
The other dynamic you have is, those who are the first to reveal news become news too.
Right. Yeah. 100.
So that's the other dynamic as well.
They used to, when I was a kid, they used to say the first one that smelt it dealt it. That's how they used to say it. I think it's fascinating. Like I would love to hear some of the people who are offended that people are attacking John MacArthur, right? Or people who are offended that people are defending John MacArthur. I'd love to have them say, you know what? I sinned against my wife last week. I was harsh with her or with my children. I said this and I said that. And man, no one puts that out there. It's a rare occasion that someone is putting that out there. Now, I'm not saying you have to, but I think like, man, why are you so outraged over other sin and not your own? When we do that, how are we no different than Luke 18, right? Mm-hmm. The Pharisee walks in. The tax collector's there, beating his chest, right? He can't even look up, right? And this gets at what, Kobe, thank you. This gets at what I'm getting at. He said that don't get clicks. 100%. It's the celebrity culture. And I don't think we realize that we're in it.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the celebrity culture. I would say, you know what else doesn't get clicks? Stories of real reconciliation.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to watch you tear down your brother.
That's right.
There were more people that were invested in me and AD Robles going back and forth publicly than they were me and AD Robles saying we reconciled.
Yeah.
Way more people that were excited for that, you know?
Things that convict don't get clicks.
Yeah.
It's
That's a bar right there, bro.
Yeah.
That's a bar right there. Things that convict don't get clicks. The problem is, though, they get clicks in eternity, though.
They do.
That's the real issue.
Facts.
So the last thing that I think the Lord is exposing is how not eternally minded we are. Like, fam, some of the people that you dislike, even if it's us, if you dislike us, cool. I don't even know you. If unless you know me, then I don't really care because I don't know you. But I think like some of the people that you dislike, that you disagree with on social justice, on politics, they're going to be right beside you in heaven, in Revelation 7, wearing white robes, worshiping the Lamb. They're going to be right there.
Yeah.
And so I just think, man, I think for all of these reasons, man, and again, who are we, right? I care about the broader church than I do. We care about that more than we care about exposing this person or that person, which is why we try to stay away from it. I try to deal with things that are bigger picture. And if you fall into that picture, then of course you're gonna feel that way. But I just think like, man, we're missing it. Like this is like you start talking about everyone's, no one wants to talk about where we're headed. Everyone wants to talk about where we're at, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I get when Rakim said it ain't where you're from, it's where you're at. That's an earthly mindset. The biblical mindset is ain't where you're from, it's where you're headed.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? It's where you're going. It's like, fam, some of these people that you're so offended at are going to be brothers with you in eternity.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then the question you need to ask is, why are you so offended? That's where, now, Kobe, that's where the idol comes in. If I can sin against the Lord in anger over someone that I don't know, then that's where the idol language comes in. Like, why are you so offended?
Right.
You don't know John MacArthur. He's not your guy. He doesn't know you. I've spent time with John Piper, and I wouldn't even come there. I don't even get offended when people say stuff about him. I've been in his home, had dinner with his family. Like, that's where the outrage comes in. It's like, people don't realize when you're angry, right? James 1, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness that God requires, right? So if I'm so angry and offended and I'm insulting my brother, Jesus said, Matthew 5, like if you say Raka, you fool, you are liable to go to hell, right? Jesus said, if you're angry at your brother in your heart, you've committed murder towards him.
Yeah. That's
why the idol language comes in, because it's like, wow, it's one thing to defend him, but you're actually sinning against the Lord to defend him, or sinning against the Lord to attack him.
Right.
There is a problem. And the problem is not that person. The problem is you and I when we're so offended. Like if you write something that I disagree with, like I say this to people all the time, bro, why does my post offend you on Facebook? Well, because it's like, but bro, I scroll through my feed and see things all the time that I disagree with. I'm not thinking like, oh, let me jump in there and tell him about himself. Okay, that's what you think. If I know you and think you're off balance, I'd hit you. But it's like
we live in the information age, and it's giving us the okay to do that in our minds.
Yeah, but you know what it's doing? So and practically, but theologically, it's giving us. So we live in the information age, but it's giving us a quasi omnipotence perspective. We think we know omniscience, right? We're everywhere and know everything.
Judge.
Yeah, right. So we become like the Lord. Remember what Satan said in the garden, you will be like God, knowing good and evil. What people don't realize is at all times, your definition of good and evil is on display.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole point of what Jesus did was live perfectly based on God's definition of good and evil, give us his spirit to remind us of God's definition of good and evil. But where you and I battle is our definition of good and evil versus God's.
That's right.
That's the battle of the Christian life.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think you got to realize that, like, when you're outraged, it's like, whose definition of good and evil is that? Or what I used to say, what fruit of the spirit is that? Now, don't get me wrong. When I say this, I'm not perfect. We all fall short. We all sin in these ways. I'm not. That's not what this is. This isn't a let me be like me as I do because I do this well. But this is like, no. But I'm self-aware enough to know, okay, I need to grow in this, or I need to go back and ask for forgiveness of this. If I didn't, I wouldn't have reconciled with AD. I wouldn't have reconciled with, or sort of asked Psycho for forgiveness. I wouldn't do those things. I'm self-aware enough to know that, and we're responsible for being self-aware. That's Hebrews 5.
That's right. That's right.
Hebrews 5 says, solid food is for the mature, for those who have their powers of discernment trained by constant practice to distinguish good and evil. When I see these hit pieces, when I see the response of the church, all it shows is that many of us, we need milk, not solid.
I mean, whatever happened to being at peace with all men as much as it is possible with you.
Yeah.
You know.
Romans 12:18, one of my favorite verses. So far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all.
Right.
That's the response that we're supposed to have.
Right.
With all of these things, especially if you don't even know the dude. I'm sorry. I don't care what books, what songs I've done. If I don't care how much you benefit from what my perspective or what we say on the show.
Right.
That doesn't mean anything if I'm not going to be faithful to the Lord. Yeah. And I don't want no one to defend me if I'm off kilter. And if you do defend me, don't sin. You lose righteous anger, righteous zeal by unrighteous anger, right? Mm-hmm. If you're going to defend someone, don't be offended at people who disagree with you, because we're all operating from information that we don't have, biases that we're unaware of, and desires that we think represent the Lord.
That's right.
I just don't think so.
That's right.
I don't think so. So anyway, just thinking out loud. This is a little conversation me and Strizzo was having. So
it's half a show.
It's half a show. Well, a quarter of a show, because we go over 2 hours.
That's true. That's true. We do go long.
So this is a quarter. We appreciate y'all, man. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for those of you that are watching. Again, we're not here acting like we got it figured out. We're just reminding you all that you also don't have it figured out. You know what I'm saying? Good. I'm Kirk Kennedy. He's Track the Wolverine. Share this video if you think it's helpful. We out of here, y'all. Grace and